Hello, thanks for joining us on your channel of choice at this time, Africa Independent Television AIT. Welcome to Focus Nigeria, your program that puts the searchlight on topical issues in the polity. My name is Benga Aruleba. The current efforts to bring sanity into the administration of the National Health Insurance Scheme, NHIS, is claiming more casualties, apart from the Executive Secretary, Professor Usman Yusuf, who has been on suspension from office since last week on sundry allegations of financial impropriety and other things. Some other management staff have now equally been asked to stay at home for now. Those put on suspension on the directive of the Minister of Health, Professor Isaac Adewale, are Olufemi Akingbade, who is General Manager and Zonal Coordinator, John Okon, General Manager Finance, Yusuf Fatikum, General Manager Human Resources and Admin, and Shehu Adamu, who is Assistant General Manager Audit. Others placed on suspension are Vincent Mamdam, who is an Assistant General Manager and Head of Insurance, Safianu Atta is Senior Assistant Officer Marketing, Owen Udodoma, Senior Manager Contribution, and Innocent Abba, Senior Assistant Officer Planning, Research, and Monitoring. All the affected officers, according to sources in the Minister's office, have been asked to stay off so as to allow the panel of inquiry set up to investigate all allegations on hindered access to carry out its assignment. As the Senate resumes plenary today, there are indications that the Committee on INEC may submit the report of its screening of the remaining 12 resident electoral commissioners nominee. Sources close to the Senate say the senators are trying to make an exception of this case because of the realization on their part that staying legislative actions on all presidential requests as they are threatened, presidential requests for confirmation as they had threatened before, may end up having so many unintended victims, including the senators themselves. But as regards these resident electoral commissioners, don't be surprised today if instead of 12 names, only 11 are presented for confirmation. And of course, the missing name will be that of Mrs. Asmau Sani Meikudi, the only female on the list of 27, and the nominee from Katsina State. If cleared, Asmau would have become the first resident electoral commissioner from the north, apart from Mrs. Amina Zakari, who was nominated as national commissioner by former President Goodluck Jonathan way back in 2010. The question then is, what has happened to the nomination of Asmau, the only woman out of 27 nominees whom President Buhari has found worthy? As I said, the question is, who's playing games here? Certainly not the president, is away, and certainly not the acting president as well. But maybe the same members of the very ubiquitous and amorphous cabal, very destructive cabal, who have been doing and undoing in the absence of the Lion King, wreaking havoc in the president's name and holding the system down on so many issues, including the swearing in of two cleared ministers. Does it then mean that these cabals in the executive, or to borrow the expression of Senator Shehu Sani, could it be that these hyenas and jackals, or maybe there are some hyenanas too among them? A female hyena, according to somebody, is hyena. Okay, maybe there are some hyenanas among them too, and they have extended their activities to issues pending before the Senate. In which case, the hyenas and hyenanas have collaborators and sympathizers in the Senate as well. I just hope my information on the removal of the name of Asmau is not correct. Otherwise, it just means that we are indeed in perilous times here with this cabal. All right. Okay, our last take this morning, I spoke about this man in glowing terms when he was recently appointed as the Director General of the National Council for Arts and Culture, and many thought, oh, Benga had turned to a praise singer now. Well, you are entitled to your opinion. Truth is that for the man Otumba Olusegun Ogunsewe, ability is completely different from abinibi. Now, in case you don't understand what I'm saying, ability is what you struggle to learn, you know. But ability is innate, you know, you are born with it. Ideas come so easy and so easily in all of the assignments Rushewe has been given. He has distinguished himself, and in this new assignment, he is set to leave a legacy of hard work and innovations as well. And it will not be too long before we begin to see that. Rushewe led a team of his management staff to DAC Communications yesterday, Monday, to solicit for our cooperation on the upcoming African Arts and Culture Expo, which Nigeria is hosting in August. During which he said, culture, if properly harnessed, could supplant oil as revenue earner in the country. And we are very rich in culture. Rushewe also spoke on the current situation in the country, including the agitations for secession and restructuring and all of that.
That we need a total partnership, support to tell our story. Enough of people telling Nigerian story. We're not as bad as being said, but because we've not respected our culture, it's part of our problem. So we want to plead to get a very wonderful support so that the whole world will know something is happening in Nigeria and it's happening well. And that's why we brought this cry to you this afternoon. We have been able to engage a lot of Nigerians out of the street now. We'll prove that to you in a minute. They've turned waste to wealth. Yeah, a lot of them. And I'm sure some of you have not taken notes quietly. We have moved out most of the blind men begging for money on the street. They are in Bauchi now. We found out what the Chinese did. The best people to knit, maths, and other things are the blind people. Because they're very focused, they are not moving, they are not in a hurry. So we tried it and it's working well. Some of these products we will present here today. Some of the best ever mug that has ever been produced in Africa is being produced in Benue State, and nobody is celebrating it. So we are bringing all this to the shore of our country, to our people. Ordinary pulse we buy for $3, $10 abroad. We've got local people to do it, which I'm presenting all this to you today. And it's being sold for only 100 naira. And it does the same job. So what we need to do is some little packaging. Somebody has to start this somewhere. It is important for us to know that nobody will build Nigeria for us. We got to build Nigeria ourselves. And that's why we have taken it upon ourselves to use culture.
All right. Time to prepare for our discussion this morning as we are back to the national clamor for restructuring. My guest this morning is former number 4 citizen of the country, former Speaker of the House of Representatives, Right Honourable Ghali Umar Na'Abba. He's my guest for today. We'll be back after this short break. We'll be back.
They see chaos and conflicts. We see community action for good governance. They see poverty and want. We see perseverance and the will to go on. They see economic law. We see the ingenuity and creative spirit of our people. We are AIT News, fresh, authentic views of Africa. How would you rather see the world? AIT News, all sides, all the time.
All right, if you're just joining us, a very warm welcome to you. We're starting this morning's conversation now because my guest is here. My pleasure to welcome former number 4 citizen of the country when he was Speaker of the House of Representatives. That was between 1999 and 2003. Right Honourable Ghali Umar Na'Abba. He's a politician and a businessman. Good to see you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, let's start from, before we get to restructuring issues, let's start from where you have cognate experience. That's the legislature. Let's look at the current relationship between the executive and the legislature. It's anything but cordial. In fact, it's been more of, in the last 2 years, it's been more of cat and mouse game. And nobody says that the relationship between the two of them must be cordial. In fact, it's in the interest of Nigeria when they are quarreling. But when when it becomes unhealthy, is when it stalls government actions one way or the other, and it doesn't. Such fights don't necessarily translate to dividends for the people, and that's what we are seeing here. Let's start from there.
Well, it's a sad commentary on our political life that almost 16 years or 17 after this democratic enterprise, the legislature and the executive would still be on this kind of path. Of course, as you mentioned, Nigerians would not definitely be comfortable if the relationship is smooth at all times. That indicates some degree of collusion. But the natural relationship between the legislature and the executive is that of friction. But that friction must be positive, because in the inevitable friction that comes into being as a result of the conflict, people become at liberty. People don't suffer arbitrariness. That is the whole essence behind the desire to see this friction between the legislature and the executive. It means they are doing their work. The whole idea behind the system of separation of powers is to avoid arbitrariness, so that power is not concentrated in one hand. And that is why there is this distribution between the executive, the legislature, and judiciary, so that arbitrariness will be curtailed. In a regime of arbitrariness, no community develops. People are expected to be free in their activities, in their thinking, in whatever they do, to the degree that they also allow others to enjoy their freedom. So what this is pointing at is, I'm afraid to say, the seeming failure of the system, because you cannot have a system where you have one party controlling the executive and also controlling the legislature, and find that on a permanent basis this kind of conflict exists.
So it's abnormal.
It's abnormal.
Yeah.
As far as we are concerned, it's abnormal and unhealthy. It doesn't help anybody. Today, we see a situation where the executive has gone to court for the interpretation of a constitutional clause that has to do with the confirmation of the chairman of a governmental parastatal. And this is a parastatal established since 2002. And chairman after chairman have been appointed. And this is sad, because as a party or as institutions controlled by one party, there is, I believe, no need to be going to court. There are, I suppose, mechanisms within the party for these kinds of discussions to take place.
Would not make it a party affair or a family affair? Because if you cast your mind back to the 16 years from 1999 up until 2015, the 16 years of PDP rule, most of those frictions that should have been sorted out legally that time were always resolved in the closet as a family affair, only for it to snowball again and become bigger. You know, it's just like trying to find shortcuts to real issues that we probably should have dealt with permanently.
Well, honestly, in this respect, some credit can be given to the PDP because when I was in the House of Representatives as Speaker, at least for 2 years, from 1999 to 2001, we used to have caucus meetings of the party every Monday.
Every Monday.
Every Monday. And you see, given the tension then between the executive and the legislature, these caucus meetings were desirable and they were very helpful in helping to solve certain problems. Because if not for those caucus meetings, the tension would have been higher. It was only in 2001 when a new chairman of the party, who is the current Minister of Agriculture, became the chairman of the party, that those caucus meetings became obliterated because the president didn't really like the caucus meetings. He didn't like to be challenged.
Yeah.
Because under these kinds of arrangements, party members, senior party members are given the opportunity to discuss governmental affairs, to challenge governmental policies, and so on and so forth. And I believe it is very good for the system. But some of these presidents, because of their military background and other idiosyncrasies, don't like to be challenged. You see, so these meetings can be very, very, very helpful in helping to solve these kinds of problems.
I'm sure those meetings accounted for why you survived most of the attempts to even remove you that time.
Well, you see, even in spite of the caucus meetings, the attempt to have me impeached as Speaker were ongoing. So that was an ongoing project since my becoming Speaker up to the time I left the House. But I never allowed those attempts, to cloud my own objectivity. And the sad thing about the existing situation is that the party that is ruling today, as a senior member of the party, the last time I attended any caucus meeting or board of trustees meeting, because I don't know whether it's board of trustees or caucus, was in February 2016. That was 1 year, 5 months from today.
That's any former organ
yes,
of the party met.
Any such meeting, caucus they call it, or board of trustees. Today it's 1 year, 5 months, which means there is no synergy, within the party. There is a disconnect between the government and party members.
Was that the system you were referring to when you said is a function of a breakdown of the system? Would that be the party system?
Well, the system is breaking down because government doesn't feel obliged to be accountable to the party that has brought it into power. While at the same time, they are demanding accountability from all institutions of government. There is a contradiction here. People, anybody who is elected must be accountable.
Precisely so.
And that's the reason I believe they don't like to be calling these caucus meetings. Because they give senior party members the opportunity to advise, to give their opinion, to even mingle with senior government officers like the president and the vice president, which hitherto they don't have the opportunity to.
Although you said that the executive is going to court now for interpretations on the power of appointments and the power of the Senate to screen and confirm in respect of some political offices. You said if the party was working well, if the system was working well, that probably wouldn't have been necessary. But isn't it necessary actually to seek the interpretation of the Supreme Court to some of these constitutional issues that kept coming up now and again? Some of the issues include okay, we'll come back to that of appointment, but let's start with the one that has always come up every year: the power of appropriation, for instance. Is it for fun that the constitutional provision on appropriation stipulated that the process should start from the executive? The proposal should be put together by the executive and brought to the legislature.
You see, all these things revolve around the philosophy of separation of powers. Being an institution among the institutions that form the government, the legislature has no right to propose a budget, appropriation process.
Okay.
It has no power to initiate appropriation. Only the president is empowered to initiate appropriation. And thereby the Constitution asks the president to submit estimates to the legislature. You see, what normally happens is in a situation where the party in power, that is the party that controls the executive, also controls the legislature. You know, the legislature has what is called a majority leader. The majority leader is in charge of all the business of the legislature by his being the majority leader, because he's the leader of the party that controls the legislature. So normally when the estimates are received, and because he's supposed to be liaising, you know, with the executive, as
the link between them.
Yes, you know, he's supposed to prepare a bill. So the majority leader has the responsibility of preparing a bill on behalf of the executive. Because once the estimates are in the legislature, the executive cannot do anything. So since they are from the same party, and it's expected that the appropriation has been discussed between them, then it is the duty of the leader to prepare a bill and present to the larger house, whether it's the House of Representatives or the Senate. Then the legislature goes on, like just as the Constitution now says, no funds can be
spent unless appropriated.
Yes, it's appropriated by the National Assembly. You know, the National Assembly or the legislature are supposed to prescribe the way money is spent by the executive, period. But you see, over time, opinions are being thrown haywire. Some, including certain lawyers, will tell you that the legislature has the power to decrease the amount of money proposed by the executive, but they cannot increase. Some will tell you that it can increase, but it can also decrease. You know, all of these things are being, you know, bandied. And it's very, very uncomfortable, because the Constitution is clear. But the Constitution, I believe, has to begin to be seen, you know, in the context of a certain spirit. The spirit is that both executive and legislature are working for the people.
Exactly.
What is the best possible means for them to work together in a way that benefits the people? Because if each of them or any of them would insist on their powers, nothing will go on. So the expectation, or what is necessary, is that before the commencement of the appropriation process, the executive or the president must call the party.
Again, takes us to the need for
Yes.
party caucus
Yes.
meetings and all of that.
He must call the party, and he must call the legislature, and also other stakeholders, whether it is zonally or statewide or whatever, so that what should be in the budget should be discussed. What are the priorities of the party? What did the party promise the people during its campaign? All of these things would have been discussed. And we used to do this during our caucus meetings between 1999 and 2001. In fact, there was a time, because we had all of these problems over the powers of the legislature and the executive to appropriate, a committee was set up by the caucus, headed by former Vice President Dr. Alex Okweme, to discuss with us on the possibility of having certain projects in the budget that the legislature wanted to see in the budget, on the possibility of deferring those projects, for a supplementary budget, which would come in September 2001. And he came with his team, he discussed with us, and we accepted. And you see, nobody knew about this, except now that I'm saying it. This is what we call, quiet and preventive diplomacy. You do things without anybody knowing, because it was not necessary. And there was another time during the caucus meetings, because we had conflicts over certain issues, that the legislature and the executive were asked, to ferret the constitution, and each one of the institutions should present to the caucus what they deem to be their constitutional powers. We did it. The president, appointed a team under the Attorney General, and they did their own. We did our own. We presented to the caucus. It was discussed, and certain agreements were reached. And I think it was healthy for the system. But today, the way it is, it's like even intervention, there is nobody to do it.
Yeah.
Nobody is called to
Even
intervene.
the Attorney General, that should probably have been able to play some role of an
Yes.
arbiter, is himself also involved in the conflict.
Yeah,
And is covered by the dust of the conflict.
so you see,
But given your experience, by any stretch of imagination, can the legislature propose projects that were not part of the estimates that the executive brought before it for appropriation? Can it happen at the level of the legislature to then propose as many as 400 projects and then add it to the budget
well,
using the power of appropriation?
you see, there is supposed to be rationality in everything we do. There is supposed to be some level of rationality. But I know why the legislature is doing that. The legislature is doing that in order for it to show its strength, because the Constitution did not impose a limit on what it can do or not do. The Constitution,
but the Constitution is clear on where they start. Their function starts when the executive has finished his own function. It's like if you put the powers in compartments. A, House A is the executive. B, legislature. C, the judiciary. It is in House A that you prepare the budget and bring it to House B, the legislature. Can the people in House B come out of their House B and stretch to House A, where you have the MDAs, you have the ministries and all of that, go to House B, stretch his hands to House B and begin to pick projects from there and bring it to House B for the purposes of appropriation, using the power of appropriation.
What I just said was that there must be some rationality in whatever we do, even though some of these things may not be right, because you see, for a project, I believe for a project to qualify to be in the budget, there must have been a design, there must have been some quantities, there must have been a lot of
so
things.
Procurement compliance.
Yes, before you put it in the budget. You know, a lot of times these variables are not there, and they're just put in the budget. You see, if you had situations where before the commencement of the process, the institutions meet and discuss, you know, most of these things or all of these things may have been averted. Because what normally contributes to these kinds of things is anxiety. And you see, when you compare the legislature, the relationship with the legislature and the executive between 1979 to 83, where you have the National Party of Nigeria in power, and in the legislature it was even a coalition. But in spite of that, you know, you find out that the appropriation process used to go on smoothly. It was going smoothly because there was synergy between the party and those in power. Those in power used to respect the party, they defer to the party, and they allow the party a certain degree of leverage. And if you recall, the National Party of Nigeria had housing and agriculture in their manifesto as the major things they were going to embark upon whenever they're in power. And today there is no local government in Nigeria where you cannot see those houses that the government of the National Party of Nigeria under President Shagari, you know, constructed. And in the area of agriculture, I know, because my uncle was involved. He was chairman of the Council of Green Revolution in my state. I knew how much more they were doing as far as agriculture was concerned. And today, if you ask a lot of legislators what is the manifesto of their party, they don't even know, because it's no longer important.
Because votes could easily be bought.
No, we have today we have a situation where politics is taken away from the people. It is, you know, because our political parties are now appropriated.
Yeah, they are owned.
Yes, by the governors. You find out that the governors are in the habit of sending whoever they want to the legislature through that monopoly of the party. So nobody cares what the manifesto is, because
the people who ask.
Well, the people will not ask. And in any case, politics has been taken away from them. So that is what this country is suffering today, and it's very, very dangerous.
Let's key that straight into restructuring. If we are to start our restructuring start a restructuring of Nigeria, isn't that where it should start? How the people should own the process of governance? Because owning the political parties is the straight path to owning owning government. How do we restructure that to make that happen? At least something close to what we have in the First Republic and in the Second Republic.
Well, honestly, it's very sad, you know, the way our political parties are now being run. And unless we get it right at the level of the political party, you will find we will continue with a situation of stagnation in our economy, stagnation in our polity, you know, stagnation in society, because all of these sectors will not grow unless the political party grow. Unless political parties grow, these sectors will never grow. There is a symbiotic relationship between them. And the political parties can only grow when there is internal democracy. And this lack of internal democracy is the bane of our politics. When you make an analysis, you'll find out that most of the ills, you know, happening, most of the ills that are besetting our polity have to do with the lack of internal democracy in our parties. When you go to the legislature today, all legislatures from federal to states, you find out that the rate of turnover of members is too high.
Precisely.
You know, it's getting very, very costly. And you will also notice that there is on a continuous basis, you know, the quality of leadership in the country is going down. And this has a direct correlation with the lack of internal democracy. Because when you have internal democracy, there is a tendency for people, you know, to vote for the best within the party, to represent the party in any election. But today, because you have a situation where in most of the states, the governors choose whoever they wanted. And when they are choosing, they will not choose who is better than them in intellect, you know, in anything that will confer advantage. They will never allow anybody, you know, to be somewhere who is higher than them, either in profile or in intellect, and other variables that point to the goodness of any person. You know, they normally prefer people who are worse than them to be in the system. So the country is being governed without most of its intellect. And it's the intellect that spurs development. So in internal democracy, you know, in election, it's not just the election that is important, but those things that are attendant, you know, competition. People compete for power. So when they compete, they come out, they express themselves, you know, everybody brings out his wares, and it's from that people are able to choose who is more equipped to represent them or not. And where they have chosen somebody, you know, in a free and fair manner, the other party who has not won, for example, would go back to the drawing board and begin to ask himself, why did he fail? And he will, next time he will better himself. And that is how the intellect, you know, develops. And because it involves as many people as possible, we have an intellectual revolution. But right now, because of the lack of internal democracy, you know, certain powers would either refuse the election to take place within the party. They will appoint, and those who are disappointed, normally younger persons, they now go into crime. That's why we have Boko Haram attracting many young men, kidnapping. When you go, most of these kidnappers being arrested, when you look at them in the papers, you see that their age between 20 to 30, young men who can do a lot of things, but are frustrated because they cannot be mobile. They are denied mobility by the system. So this is what is going on.
To reform it, for instance, what do we need to do? Because I'm not so sure some of these things can be decreed. But to what extent has the influence of money distorted our leadership recruitment process in this country, for instance? If I take you, for instance, I'm sure in 1999 when you were contesting, although the election was in 98.
99.
99. Okay, it was the local government election in late 98. In 1999 when you were contesting, if you probably require, say, 20 million to be able to say, okay, I have some money and I can bid for this office. Today, if you are bidding for that same office to be a member of the House of Representatives, if you don't have close to 200 million naira in your account, you are a non-starter. Correct me if I'm wrong.
To a certain degree.
But the question is, how many young men in Nigeria have 200 million naira to start with, comfortably sitting in their account, for them to then nurse the ambition of going for a seat in the House of Reps, or even
You see,
nursing ambition to be governor.
a number of forces have convoluted to make the system like this. For example, you see, in 1999, when I decided to contest to come to the House of Representatives, you see, after joining the party, I made my intention known to my constituents, and I visited the party in all the wards, and intimating them with my intention. And I interacted with them a lot. And about a few days before the primary election, the delegates who were supposed to do the election, to vote, sent a delegation to me to tell me that they had decided that I was going to be their candidate, because in their own estimation, I am better than the other contestants, about 4 of them. But please, let me get a place for them where they will go back and, retreat, so that these people don't see them again, because they have been visiting their homes with money, to make them,
to induce them.
Yes, to induce them. So we arranged a place for them where they went. They spent all the 5 days there before the primary
Before the
election.
primaries.
Yes, on their own free will.
Mm.
That is the duty of
Kind of quarantine them,
yes,
somewhere, so
they
that
said
they
wanted
will
to
not be
quarantined.
influenced.
Yes, I asked them, I said, but you can as well live in your homes and avoid these people. And they said that, sir, the heart hasn't got bones. You know what that means? So we arranged a place for them. They went there, and they were there up to the election. They went, voted for me, and went back home. I won. In 2002, during the primary elections for the TDP, in 2002 I was the speaker.
Yes.
And of course, the president.
You had become a marked man by that
Yes,
time.
I became a marked man.
Operation Stop Ghali Umar was effectively on.
Along with as many of my colleagues as possible. And the day the primary election was going to take place, the night before the primary election, some of the delegates came, and they told me that the state governor has asked that they be rounded up, and some of them were promised money, machines, and cloth, so that they don't vote for me. There was collusion between the president and my governor, and therefore they wanted me to arrange for them to be taken somewhere. So what we did that night was to arrange for them to sleep in Katsina. Benga, don't forget that I was the Speaker of the House of Representatives then.
Number 4 citizens.
Yes, and this was happening to me. We took them to Katsina. They slept there. Around 7 a.m. in the morning, they left for Kano, and they went straight to the venue of the election. The election was to begin around 11 o'clock. And suddenly, we discovered that the state government had abducted the chairman of the panel sent to Abuja, from Abuja, the national headquarters, to supervise the primary elections. And they went on to declare that election in my constituency would not take place because there was a security situation, which was false. And we sat down, we didn't know what to do. Then around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, an assistant director from SSS in Kano came to me and he said to me, "Sir, I have heard what is being arranged against your election." He said to me, he's from Ogun State, he said, "As long as I am in Kano, nobody can do that to you." He said I should give him time to go. He will look for that chairman wherever he is. He will take him out, bring him out. I thanked him and he left. Around 6 p.m., he came back and he told me that he has located the guy in the government house and that I should arrange for women dress for him so he can go and bring him out.
Dressed like a woman?
Yes. we got some for him, gave it to him, and he went. Around 8 o'clock, he came back and told me that he had taken the guy out and had given him to someone, and that I should tell my party secretary. You know, as at that time, the party machinery was not with me, with the exception of the secretary, who was independent-minded and very strong. So, and it was his responsibility to arrange for the election. So I called him and I told him that the chairman has been located somewhere and the SSS has hidden him somewhere. And the SSS man advised that the election should not take place until after midnight. So the secretary was happy. He arranged for everything in the venue, and that election started 2 a.m. Midnight, after midnight, 2 a.m. Then, you know, the election finished around 4:30 a.m. That was my primary election. The government could not do anything. So this is to show you the extent to which, you know, certain governors could go to thwart this process. And by the time we came back, as many members as possible met with that kind of situation in their constituencies, simply because the executive realized that as long as some of us were in the legislature, they would never have their way. And don't forget that the president wanted this power elongation.
It had always been on the card.
It has been on the card,
that time.
And he realized that as long as I am there, it would
They
never
have a very strong
Yes.
National Assembly.
So from the House of Representatives and from the Senate, they marked out certain members, you know, not to come back. And that has been the trend, you know.
It takes quick seconds. This restructuring calls and all of that. How do we manage it such that it doesn't become the platform for secession calls for expulsion and all of that, as we are seeing?
Well, honestly, this
Is that a call for the National Assembly to make or for the executive to make?
Well, all of them are supposed to synergize. You know, people are calling for restructuring simply because there is a perception that this system is not just. There is no justice in the system. And we must have a system that is just. And unless we have a system that is just, this call for restructuring will continue to take place. And I personally am in favor of some aspects of this restructuring because it will give.
What aspect, for instance, quickly?
Well, for example, when I come from Kano State, you know, and the mainstay of the economy of Kano State is agriculture. And luckily, we have this Kano River project, which the government of Kano State inherited from the northern region. During the northern region, design was made to canalize the Kano River basin for the purpose of irrigation. And in 1967, after the states were created, the governor of Kano State, Honourable Ghali Umar Na'Abba, took that to be his priority, and he started. And Benga, what that governor did in 9 years, in 40 years, in spite of successive heads of state and presidents coming from the north, that project is still not completed. I don't think they have done 1/4 of it. And if it was allowed, you know, because the federal government took it over, and along with other river basins, you know, transformed them into river basins, you know, owned by the federal government or supervised by the federal government. I believe that if the federal government did not take it over, Kano State would have been much better today.
So restructuring
and
for
so
you
are
means,
many other states.
Yeah, restructuring for you means devolution of more power.
So more powers should be devolved to the states.
Okay.
This, I believe, will help the system because the federal government has no business
in agriculture.
In a lot of things.
All right, at least I got that point, and I think it's okay. It should form part of the ongoing conversation on our social platform as well. That suggestion you just made now, and I'm sure a lot of people. Kingsley is talking about the audio of the program. Okay, all right, we didn't know that. And Fred Motti is saying your guest carefully avoided the restructuring question. He didn't. I just asked the question and he has answered. But other things he said regarding the politics of Nigeria are germane and very truthful. That's Fred Motti. Let's leave it there. Thank you so much. Right,
okay,
Honourable Ghali Umar Na'Abba was Speaker of the House of Representatives 1999 to 2003. He's a member of the APC today, so that means he's a practicing politician and a businessman as well. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you too for investing your time with us today. The conversation continues both on our social platform. Can you just give us a second? You don't like my talking? I'll see you tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of the day.